Hi, and welcome back to Jokes on Me again. So, if you saw the last video, you know that I went ahead and picked all of my next 5 books. It was 5 for a reason. If you have not seen it, I'm just going to show you like a fast forwarded clip right here. What happened was I had to start over anyway with the last book that I had drawn with Love Under Contract. And so then I drew a 5, and that is a repeat author. So I went over and looked at my Spring Into Reading Readathon bingo board because I wanted to pick one of those books, and I went with Zora Neale Hurston, Their Eyes Were Watching God. So that was the one that I picked for that. Then I drew a 3, and I have to do all 3 prompts. The first one, longest book. I had to look through every one of the books, but I found the longest one, which was The Firemen by Joe Hill, 768 pages. Then I had to do a readathon book, which thankfully I have the bingo board to help me out. So I got Fresh Brewed Murder. That is the shortest one that I have picked for my bingo board. So I wanted an easy one after The Firemen. And then I got First on Goodreads. So I used storygraph like I always do, and I went and found the one that had been on there the longest, and it was codenamed Helene. So those 3 were because I drew a 3. Then, wonderfully, I drew a 7. And a 7 means I get to jump across the board if it were folded in half. So I got to move to a readathon book, and I picked the group book for the Spring Into Reading Readathon, and it is Shadow of the Fox. So here's where we are. I have 5 books to read, and I wanted to go ahead and kick this off and talk about it before I left because I'm going to be driving tomorrow, and all the rest of the clips are going to be on my phone as I'm talking about these books. So I'm kicking it off with Their Eyes Were Watching God, and then I will move right into The Fireman, Fresh Brewed Murder, Codenamed Helene, and then The Shadow of the Fox. I will check in with you as I've read every one of these, and then we will see what we do. I will have my laptop with me, so I should be able to record myself moving along the board. We'll just figure it out. If I get to read these 5 books in the next 5 days, I think, before I come home. I'm coming home in like 7 days. So we'll see if I can read 5 books in 7 days. That does not happen, especially when one of them is 768 pages. So that is going to get everything kicked off. I will come back and check in with Their Eyes Were Watching God. I will probably be really tired in the morning as we're loading up and leaving, and maybe I'll get some clips of us driving down the road as I'm telling you about these books. We're kind of going through the middle of the United States, in the middle of, well, the end of winter. So I feel like everything's going to be dead. There's not going to be any pretty flowers or trees or anything to look at. It's going to be boring roads. But that's it. I will check in as I read and see what I think of Their Eyes Were Watching God. It's my intimidating read, so I kind of want to get it done early rather than later. So that is what I'm starting with. And then hopefully we can get ourselves around to the end of this board in the next video, if not in this one. But I might not even get to play again if it takes me too long. Like, I've already been talking for 5 minutes. I like to talk, in case you haven't noticed. So let's see if I can keep these 5 books like pretty succinct. My thoughts on them, I'll try. And I'll check back in with you later. Hello, I am back. It's been a week, and I did not record a single thing while I was gone. I mean, yes, I recorded pictures, or I took pictures of things that we did and the state signs when we drove through them. I don't know if anybody else does this. Maybe it's just a U.S. thing, or I don't know, maybe it's not. But when you're driving, whether you're driving like in Europe where you're driving through countries, or you're driving in the U.S. where you're driving through states, but we always try to get a picture of the sign that says welcome to whatever state. So anyway, we drove from North Dakota to South Dakota to Iowa, a tiny little bit of Nebraska, to Missouri, and then to Arkansas. And then we did the reverse to get us back home. So I'm tired. We just got home last night, but I read so many books, especially for Jokes on Me, that we've got to catch up so that I can continue reading and try to get more stuff done. First of all, the difference in the video from what you just saw in that last clip and right now is because my husband needed to use my computer while we were gone, and he fixed the issue with the camera. But I didn't know there was an issue, and now I can't fix it back. He says, I'll put it back. And so he did some stuff, and this is what it looks like. So definitely it did not go back. Like, I used to be able to see what those things were in the background. My desk is not black. It's more this color, but it looks black. I do not understand what has happened to my thing. My hair looks like a helmet on top of my head and not hair. So this was an issue I had before, and I thought I fixed it, and now this is what it looks like. So I don't know. My actual webcam that I bought and attached to this, it doesn't have its own app. Like, I cannot find a way to hook it up. Like, I can't find a way to look at the actual camera, if that makes sense. I can't adjust things on the camera, and I can't show you what it looks like because I'm using it to film. So anyway, I think I'm going to have to just buckle down or break down, whatever. I'm going to have to buy an actual webcam that is not the cheapest one Amazon has available. So I guess I'm opening this clip by saying, if anybody has any suggestions for good webcams, I would really like to know about it. Okay. Their eyes were watching God. First of all, just a second. Okay, so where I left you is I had just drawn 3 cards and gotten 5 books out of it. So the first one that I decided to read were Their Eyes Were Watching God. This was fantastic. Like, it was just as good as I expected it to be. And I had seen so many reviews, or a lot of reviews, about the narrator doing a really good job with the dialect that is written in the story. And the dialect that's written in the story is really close to like what I grew up hearing and speaking like and everything. So it was just really close to home to me. And I really liked listening to the narrator read this story to me. This is just about a woman who doesn't have a lot of choices. Her grandmother was born into slavery, and then when her grandmother got pregnant by the slave owner, and as soon as the baby was born, or when the baby was not very old, slavery was abolished and she was freed. And she was like, okay, great. My daughter is going to do the things that I didn't get to do and the things that I wanted, that I want to do. But, you know, we all know that it was not just like, oh, yay, slavery's over. Everybody's equal and free. And so her daughter ends up in a situation, and she has her granddaughter. And that is who is telling us the story. She's being raised by her grandmother at the beginning. Her grandmother has some ideas about how things should go and how things should be done. And generally speaking, they're not the same ideas that her granddaughter has. So we follow the granddaughter as she makes her way through life and the things that happens to her along the way, where it seems like she's just ultimately looking for love and a place to belong and a place to feel like who she wants to be. And the quote, their eyes were watching God, happens in a very tense moment in the book. I really liked it a lot. And I've read one Zora Neale Hurston before, but I really think that I want to go read more from her. So I will be adding her books onto my storygraph to read in the future. And that one was done probably on the first day of our drive, because I started it the night before we left. And then the day that we were driving, I listened to the rest of it. Okay, then I spun a 3, as you guys saw, and I had to read longest book, readathon, and first on Goodreads. So my longest book was The Firemen by Joe Hill. My readathon book, I picked Fresh Brewed Murder. And my first on Goodreads, I picked Codename Helene, because it was the oldest one on my TBR. Okay, The Firemen. I thought this was really good. I I didn't go look up any information about this book, but I'm wondering if other people see a lot of Stephen King in Joe Hill's books. Like, I feel like I've heard this before, but the number of times that he used phrases directly from a Stephen King book, and I mean phrases like, okay, I know 2 different times he used the face of your father, like you've forgotten the face of your father. And that is like integral to the Dark Tower series. And I just know that if I was writing a book and I caught myself using a phrase that another author has used so much in one of their series, I would be like, I need to switch that up a little bit. And the fact that he just left it in there, I'm just like, okay. It's just weird how many times I thought Stephen King could be writing this book. Like, it really, really felt like Stephen King was writing it. Anyway, Joe Hill is Stephen King's son. And in the very beginning of this book, he says, thank you to, he wrote Something Wicked This Way Comes, Ray Bradbury, for the title, for letting me steal the title or something, for the stolen title. And then thanks to my dad for stealing everything else, or letting me steal everything else. And then thanks to my mom, who helped me decide on the spores for this. Anyway, there is a pandemic happening in this book. And then I had to go check. It was definitely written before our pandemic in 2020. And so, but these people get infected and they get stripes on their skin that looks like, well, they say it looks like dragon scale. That's what the name of the disease becomes. And they just catch on fire eventually and burn up. So this is about a nurse who is, well, she's our main character. So I'm going to say she's our main character, but she's not the only character. She's not the fireman. The fireman is a character, but we're mostly dealing with a nurse who is trying to work and help people who have it, but haven't like caught on fire yet. And they're all staying in a hospital and like trying to quarantine from people. And they have to wear all of these clothes and protective gears when they go in. And they don't know how it's spread. They don't know anything about it. And what they don't know is they're protecting themselves in the wrong way. But anyway, one day the fireman comes in carrying a little boy who has the dragon scale, but his main issue is that he has a ruptured appendix. And so she kind of helps navigate him through the waiting line of everybody who thinks they have dragon scale and everything else that's going on. So she just helps him. And then they kind of get connected through that way. And we find out, I mean, I don't know, it just has so many Stephen King elements where people just go completely off the deep end. And again, maybe I was reading too much into it because he's Stephen King's son. But anyway, I really liked the book. I like the book. I just can't get past the thoughts that I have surrounding it. So anyway, then we move to Fresh Brewed Murder. I thought this was going to be more of a cozy mystery, and I guess it pretty much was, but it had other elements in there. But anyway, so a woman has decided to start a coffee stand in what they're calling the rail yard. This might be an actual place that exists, but I don't know. Anyway, her uncle owns the rail yard, and nobody knows that at first, that is how she's gotten the rail yard. She's estranged from her family, other than her uncle, and she's, I guess, not estranged. She's newly connected to her dad. Not newly, but wow, I'm trying to over-explain this. Let me just say, she has decided to open up a food stand. She has not talked to her mother since she left at 16 years old, which was about 12 years ago, where we are in the story. And someone turns up dead, and that person is connected to her mom and also connected to the rail yard and the building that's being put in across the street that has a lot of protesters. So because our main character was also living on the street for a little bit, she is trying to befriend some children who are living on the street, and it just has a lot of elements to it, like I said. So it's a little bit more robust than what I would call a normal cozy mystery, but it still had a lot of those cozy elements, and I thought that it was really good. I didn't know who the murderer was until just before our character finds out who the murderer is. So anyway, I recommend it. I thought that it was good. Then we moved to the historical fiction. I know that if you've been around, you know how I feel about historical fiction. It is one of those that either I can't read it at all or it's one of my favorites. Like I don't generally do historical fiction that I'm like, it was somewhere in the middle. Like it seems to be either I love it or no. And Codename Helene was a no for me. And I know somebody wrote and said that they like it. And maybe it was more to do with like my mindset. I was on vacation down at my parents' house. I was like full in rest mode. And maybe I just wanted like a murder or a romance and not a espionage spy type story. So the writing was not bad. I just could not get hooked into the story. And so I DNF'd it. And I still counted it as reading the first on my Goodreads because the whole point of this is to read the books that are on my storygraph TBR. And they're on my storygraph because I may like them. Not because I know I will and not because I have to read them, but because I may like them. So after all of those, I landed on the one we're on now, which is Readathon. And so I decided that I was going to read the group book for Spring into Reading Bingo Boards Readathon or Seasonathon. And then I changed my mind. After I gave up on Codename Helene, I thought, I need one that I know I'm going to want to read. And I was not feeling fantasy for some reason. So I still picked a readathon book, but I read The Reading List by Sarah Nisha Adams. This was adorable. And I picked it for the bingo board because I thought it was going to make me cry. I came really close to crying. I do not like to cry. I do not like to cry in a book. I know that my therapist probably needs to discuss all of that with me, but I don't like to pick books that are going to make me cry. So I picked this book because it might make me cry, and I was a little concerned about that. Anyway, this is about a man whose wife has passed away, and he's cleaning up their room one day, and he finds a book under the bed, The Time Traveler's Wife. I've never read it. And he starts reading this book, and he sees so many similarities between the time traveler's wife learning to say goodbye to her time traveler, I guess. I don't know. We get a few spoilers for these books along the way, but anyway. So he sees a ton of similarities and he thinks, I want to read books more. And his wife was always a huge reader. His granddaughter is a huge reader, and he's having a hard time like connecting with her. So he's decided that he's going to go get a book from the library and maybe he can read and chat with his granddaughter about reading. Well, at the library, we're dealing with a girl that's working there that does not want to be there. She got the job because her brother was like, hey, my friend can get you this job for the summer. She is a high school student. She's, I think, going into her senior year, her last year of high school. And this is the summer before she goes to school. So she doesn't want to be there. She doesn't know anything about books. She doesn't like to read. And so he comes in. He can't even figure out how to open the automatic door. There's a button that you push. And so she's so mad at him that he can't, because she was doing something else, and he can't just get in the library. So he walks in, he's very nervous, he's very shy, and he doesn't know like what to ask or how to find a book. And then she's over here being pretty rude to him about the books and all of that stuff. So he ends up just running out. He doesn't ask any questions, but he's holding a book in his hand when he runs out of the library. So he's technically stolen a book. Anyway, he finally gets up the courage to go back in. And at the same time, her boss was like, you have got to get yourself under control. I know that you don't want to be here, but this is not how you're going to act in this library. Well, as she's moving through the library, she finds a handwritten list of books. And she picks up the first book on the list, which was To Kill a Mockingbird. And which, by the way, the old man, he calls it To Kill a Hummingbird all the time, which I think is so funny. And he also says it's by Lee Harper because the way her name is written, it's got her last name and then her first name. So instead of Harper Lee, he thinks her name is Lee Harper. It's really funny. Anyway, every time he says To Kill a Hummingbird, I would laugh out loud. Okay. Anyway, so she's almost done reading it, or she could be finished with it. I don't know. And he comes back in the library and she's like, crap. He wants a book and I need to be nice to him. And so she apologizes for how she acted. And she tells him, she's like, here's a book. And she's like, I enjoyed it when I read it. Maybe you'll like it. And he takes it home and like reads it so fast. And what's funny is like he's thinking about it from the point of view of like Atticus and all the adults in the book To Kill a Mockingbird, and she's thinking about it from like Scout and Jim and all the kids. And he brings the book back, and she was like, did you like it? Like, she still doesn't know. And she's like on the second book on the list at this point, and she's worried about what he's going to think about the book. And the second book is The Kite Runner. And she's like, everybody around her is like, by the way, this is a very sad book. Like, it's devastating. This book is going to devastate you. And she's like, okay, stop. Everybody kept telling her about it. So she finally finishes it. She gives it to him. She's like, listen, this book is so sad, but she hands it to him. And anyway, the whole premise of the book, that's the whole book. They go back and forth, but we get to see his family and what's happening with him, and her family and what's happening with her. And there are it's devastating what's going on in their families and the kind of things that they're both having to deal with, and the way that the books help them to put a different perspective on the things that they're going through. I loved it so much. So if you have not read this, especially if you love books, the way that they take the stories that they're reading and work it into their lives, it's amazing. And the number of times that they need to be brave and they go, what would Atticus Finch do? Oh my gosh. I mean, I love To Kill a Mockingbird anyway, but the fact that they love to look back at Atticus and go, okay, he made these decisions, and they live in London. Like, that's another thing. They don't know exactly where To Kill a Mockingbird is set. They're like, I don't know. It's Alabama or Georgia or something in the U.S. Like, they don't even know. But it's so good. Anyway, I loved it a lot. And that's where I'm going to stop. So I'm down here in the bottom on our little game board. And then on my way home, I drew some more cards. But I'm going to put that in the next video. So we're not done with Jokes on Me. I've still got to get all the way back around here to this spot in order to have completed it. So now let's see. I have officially read 11 books since I started playing this game. And I am at the bottom. So I will keep going. I'll see you in the next one. I just put out the video of me reading my recent reads to catch up on my thing. And so and you guys seem to really like that format where I go through and discuss the books I've read and move them over. So I'm going to, at the next one, mark off all the ones I've read on my boards and move them over to the done side, if I can move any, and then see where we are in the whole scheme of things. Okay, so let me take myself off. This is what the board looks like at this point. The things I've finished, the things I still have to finish. Now, some of these, like Callum right here, I've been reading on my own, not part of the thing because I need to. That one is on the Kindle, and it takes me a lot longer to read Kindle books, so I've already started on Callum. I'm not far from finishing it. So anyway, we will see where I am in the next one, and that is going to do it. Thank you so much for listening to me ramble about all of these books. Let me know if you like any of these, if you've read any of these, and what you thought about them. Otherwise, we'll see you when I continue to play this game. I kind of thought this would be a 3-video series and I would be all caught up. Not so. That's not what's happening. So I will see you in the next one to continue our game. Thanks for watching. Bye.